Okay.
Okay, hopefully you're not going to ask me, not difficult, but there are certain questions that I can answer them, but I prefer that they be off record, especially if they touch on my monarchy. If it's controversial, of course. I'm not sure if you have those.
Yes.
You have those.
Yes, but we can push those to the side. I was interested in learning about the boundaries that you have when it comes to writing for the Times of Swaziland. I know that you write about business, agriculture.
Yeah.
Then you had this one incident about the girl who wanted to run for parliament.
You saw that on
Yes.
online. Just to give you a background on that one, that was like my personal opinion. That was my personal piece. Because it's a column for the editor of that weekend. That's a weekend publication. It comes out every Saturday.
Okay.
Ideally, I write for the daily, the Monday to Friday in the business section. That's the one that I'm heading. But for a couple of weeks, I had to stand in for our weekend editor. He was on leave. Yeah, so they asked me to stand in for him. So when you stand in as the news editor, as an editor for the weekend publication, you also write the main column, which is the one that you're referring to of that girl Mana.
Yeah.
Yeah, the joke is on you, Miss Sugati. Miss Sugati, if you read it, Miss Sugati is the presiding officer who more like stopped this girl from running for parliament. So that's the Miss Sugati on the joke is on you, Miss Sugati, and the Mana is the girl. But I'm sure you read it, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
And it had to do with because of her dress code that she was.
Because of her dress code.
Yeah.
Okay, as you probably know, Swaziland is a very cultural country. It's most of everything that we do is based on culture. But yes, we do have laws, or we do subscribe to international laws that are applicable the world over. But the baseline of it is that we are very cultural. So what happened is that when the country as a whole was preparing for elections, people were told on the dress code, people were told on how to behave, we were told on a whole lot of number of things. So, but the dress code, ideally, where you were not supposed to wear pants, it's only when you're going to a royal residence. Say it's a chief's area, a chief's homestead, or anything that is regarded as a royal residence. But if the elections in your area were held in a public school, or would ask the university to give us a portion of an area where we can get people to vote from, that's a public area. The dress code issue does not apply. So in this Mana case that that I wrote about, the elections were not held in a royal residence, so she was free to dress up in any way. Yeah. But unfortunately, it could be that the presiding officers misread the whole thing and they stopped her from running for elections. I mean, anybody in my country, if you're beyond 18, if you're of a sober mind, and if you're a Swazi citizen, you can run for elections. So she had all those attributes, so she could. So the dress code issue came into play, and we actually picked it up and ran with it to say, how can anybody stop an eligible person to run for elections? And this presiding officer said she thought she was joking. Then the point is, how can you say anybody's joking in such an important national assignment? I mean, we only do it once in 5 years, so it can never be a joke. So that's the premise of it. But yes, dress code is an issue only when you're going to the royal residences where the king is, where the king will be there. You are asked not to wear pants. Women shouldn't wear pants. It's just our culture, yeah. It's just our culture. You need to be properly dressed, either traditional regalia or cover up if you're a woman. Cover your head as well sometimes, but it's not really that much. Also, even in parliament, when you're covering parliament news, when you're going to parliament anyway, if you're a woman, you don't wear pants, and you need to cover your head at all times and cover your shoulders. It's just a standard rule that we have back home.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, as a journalist, like you said, you have boundaries with what you have to write. You said there was an instance where you had to do like a public apology for the governor.
Yes.
Can you explain on that story for me?
What happens is that, but you must put it very nicely in a very subtle way. Ideally, we don't report on royalty, on certain issues on royalty. Not everything, on certain issues on royalty. And I think everybody knows this. Well, not I think everybody knows this in my country. There are certain issues that we cannot report on royalty because more than anything, it's seen as disrespectful to undress the king. You know, like I said, we're very cultural, we're very respectful country. So if now you start writing everything about the king, it's like you're undressing him to the whole world, and it's more like against our practice as a Swazi nation. So what happened here, ideally, is that we were called by the governor of the central bank to. It's an orientation for journalists, for editors rather, because it was meant for editors. It was an orientation on how the central bank works, you know, the functions of the central bank and so forth, the structures of the central bank, what each department does. It's just to give us a clue on how the central bank works, basically. So we went there, and it was at a point when our country was facing serious economic crisis, that we had probably never seen before, and obviously it had to do with the global economic crisis that were filtering through into us, and also trade issues because we're big on trade. So because of the global crisis, we couldn't trade more. Countries were not buying from us, so that had an impact on our reserves as a nation. So it wasn't a press briefing, this orientation on the central bank operations came at a time when the country was faced with those economic challenges. And we had a whole lot of questions for the governor regarding it. It was so much of an interest to everybody because it was affecting everybody. Yeah. So the governor was quite open to us on how things were going. I think he became too frank, not noting that as the media we were picking up on all these things. And when we got to the newsroom, we just went haywire. We wrote everything that he said.
Without the boundaries that were set.
Well, not because they didn't say anything was off record.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Nobody said anything was off record. Everything, according to us, was on record. And we actually recapped with some of the issues where they said, at some point, they said government didn't have money to the point that they had to ask some big institutions to assist, like your net banks, your insurance companies, your whichever other companies. And they named them. They named the companies that they had asked assistance from, and we had to recap. That's just one example, but most of the information we had to recap. So everybody could see we were writing, we were taking pictures, we were recapping, so obviously it was on record, and nobody had said it was off record. Everything they said we can write. Went back to our newsrooms, we started writing, and I think it's one question that actually caused a whole lot of noise, and it's a question that I asked on why isn't the central bank being firm on government in terms of, not always giving the money to pay civil servants, because the other issue was that the central bank was digging on the reserves to pay civil servants to do this and that, because government cash flow was in a crisis. So we asked them why they were not.
The same class is going to reconvene for the
okay. Session. Okay. Can I just finish off this one? Yeah. So we asked them why can the government put some proper structures in place to ensure that they're not always giving out money to government and so forth. And the response by the central bank governor was in vernacular, and I quoted it verbatim as he said it. But it went to mean that the minute you start questioning, they'll ask you who you are. Something like that. But, it's better explained when he spoke in vernacular. So that was the whole thing, to say, now why are we putting in other authorities into this whole debate of the central bank and so forth. So
20% of your grading will be depend on punctuality, so you better hurry.
Okay. Who's grading us, John? Are you? Yeah, so it was something like that. And, it caused a whole lot of noise with government. Government felt like the central bank had given us too much information, some information that really we shouldn't have published. And in some point there were words of higher authorities, and usually higher authorities, they mean, I don't want to say the king per se, but people beyond government. So there was a lot of...
Prime Minister step in?
Yeah, the Prime Minister's office was working with us. They were putting pressure on the central bank to find out what really happened. So now the central bank had to come to us and say, look guys, how can we correct this? At first there was a bit of debate of whether the governor said this or not, and I had to issue out my notebook and I showed them, these are the notes that I had written. We went to the other publication, the Swazi Observer, it was this one. This is what we had written, this is what happened, this is what happened, and it was in order. Everything was in order on my side. So my publisher said, you can't crucify Cassandra. She did her job. She reported on this. And then the tone later changed to say, you know what, we're in a bit of trouble here. So we'd like you to assist us in trying to clean up this mess. If Cassandra can take a bit of flag for it, the newspaper take a bit of flag for it as well. They'll just the central bank agreed to issue out a statement and pay for it. They did, but we had to see that statement first to say, no, we don't want to be seen as having reported untruthful stuff, but we can allow you guys to sort of like cleanse yourselves a bit, but not necessarily compromising my integrity and the integrity of the newspaper. So we had to read that first, and we rewrote it to what we thought would be okay. But it was more like an apology. People knew about it. They knew everything that happened around that. So they just knew it was, government trying to, the central bank trying to be seen as not being on the wrong in terms of giving us information. Like we had gone overboard with the information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you just walk and talk. Okay. Now, I want to go over to women's rights. Would you say that you have rights when it comes?
I think now it has opened up a bit. It's much better than before because even though the issue would be that maybe we as women don't have confidence in each other, but the doors have been open. Even in Parliament, women are now we are supposed to be having more women going into Parliament, but just not many women are being voted for. And I think it starts with us as women. We usually vote for men. I don't know why, but that's what we do. But we have been given a whole lot of opportunities. We are having female editors as well, myself included.
Yes.
Even in the other publication, we are seeing female editors coming on board. We are seeing female MDs, female executives. So they are given opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think, especially in the private sector, even in public sector, women are given opportunities. We're having so many female ministers as well.
In your article, you wrote that you like to promote and empower women with what you write.
Yes.
How do you do so?
Let them know about the opportunities that are available for them, and they can make use of them. Because I think in the olden days, it was more like only men can do this, only men can do that. Some of these women are not aware that they can actually grab these opportunities to their own advantage instead of shying away from them. So that's one way of.
And the king promotes that too.
The king he's pro-women. He is pro-women. You can see with the ministers that he has appointed in the last parliament that we just dissolved. Yeah, he had pushed a whole lot of female ministers into his cabinet. So we're quite excited. Well, there's room for improvement, of course, but it's not as bad as it was in the
it's a
past.
constitution.
It's exactly. It's also embedded in the constitution. Yeah. Constitutional monarchy. Yeah. So.
Okay, beautiful. And you feel like this equality, these rights, and having the king support women has helped you excel with the journalistic field? There was never really. Did you have any rocky moments? Would you say?
We'll talk about that.
Ladies? Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.